So today I wanted to share with you a concept that's going to make your tracks a lot more memorable, and that's incorporating repetitive hooks, or what they call motifs, sprinkled throughout your track. This is going to help draw the listener in and make your songs more catchy. So we're going to break down exactly how to do this, but before I do, just a quick mention to our new course, the 7-day song finishing system, which will walk you through the process of finishing your own track in 1 week. So links below for that one. So the idea is that sort of when we get to the more intermediate advanced level of producing, this comes naturally, by the way, but you sort of start to sprinkle little hooks and repeating ideas all throughout your track in all of the different elements, and they really help to gel and glue everything together. So these are the things that I'm referring to when I'm talking about a hook. I'm sort of just talking about any intentional, repetitive idea. People also have referred to these things in the past as motifs, so just like a few notes with a specific rhythm that sort of repeat over and over, and then they sort of expand around to create an idea. That's a motif. But it's these little hooks that give our groove structure. It's usually what our tracks are built around. These are also the things that sort of get stuck in your head when you're listening to a track. And these are also the things that make your track more memorable and noticeable. So it's really important to get these things right. And we're going to dive into the process of how I at least think about this when I'm going about my melody writing. I just wanted to mention a few misconceptions of hooks as well before I jump in. The word has a lot of connotations to it. You don't have to be writing a pop song to make a hook. Your song doesn't have to be hooky to have a hook. It doesn't have to be a melody as well. We can be talking about drums and rhythm when it comes to a hook. You know, rhythms can get stuck in your head as well. So it just needs to be something catchy. It doesn't need to be melodic. And this sort of all comes down to the fact that humans love to recognize patterns in music. And when we sort of take that pattern away, then it's really hard to get into the music. It's really hard to sort of latch onto it and get it sort of stuck in our head and sort of want to listen to it over and over again, because there's really nothing, no real substance there. It's sort of just all over the shop when we remove that pattern to it. So what we're really trying to do is really just emphasize the patterns within our music so that our tracks are more satisfying to listen to. So I wanted to start off by showing you this little loop that I have so far. It's just some drums and a little bass line and a little synth idea. So let's have a listen. If I mute the synth, so you can see that there's a lack of kick drums in this sort of spot, you know, every bar in this same spot. There's a big gap here that's sort of waiting to be filled. So I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, there's a spot here ready to be filled by a hook or some sort of intentional motif, right? Something that we can repeat over and over and make slight variations to. So what I'm going to do is I've got this guitar bass preset just from Operator, and I'm just going to make a MIDI clip here and think about something that I can do in this spot that can fill this gap. So let's have a listen. Okay, I think I've got an idea. Let's have a go here. I think this note is A, yep. And so I'm going to find an A like this, something like this. Maybe even go down another octave. And then I've got this little idea in my head. So let's try and see if we can do this. Like this. But I'm going to extend this note out. And also, when you overlap notes in this particular preset, I know that this is enabled already. They're going to glide together. So let's have a listen to this. And I'm just going to glide this one here as well. That sounds really cool. So let's duplicate that one over. So if you look up here, it's a little bit different in this second bar. We're missing this note here, which is just right after this note. It's like right here. So in this second bar, we can actually put another note here, something like this. And what I'm actually going to do is just change the notes slightly. So like this, something like this. So I would say the hook in this melody is really like the main feature of this little bass melody is really this slide from this note to this one. And so this is kind of like the hook in this melody, and these notes here are more able for you to sort of change them around because this is the main feature of this melody. Also the fact that it holds a whole quarter note whereas all the other notes are shorter. So right? And then these notes we can actually change around. They're in the same rhythm, which makes it familiar to us, but we can actually change them around because they're kind of less important in terms of the actual note value itself. And it's also important to know that this little hook that we've created here also works well with this synth. So let's have a listen, see if they work together. So it really works because you can see in this sort of part, the synth kind of slows down. I think it does a little bit of a reverse, and as it's doing this thing slides up. So they're sort of complementing each other nicely. So actually, when I'm listening to this track from an outside perspective, this is probably the thing that you're actually going to listen to. This is the thing that you're going to latch onto. This is the actual hook here. But what I'm saying is that the hook is sort of comprised of lots of little parts in your bass line, maybe even in your drums, and these sort of complement and combine together to create the main hook of the song. So it's these little motifs that you sort of build and expand upon, which make your song actually interesting. So this is a pretty simplified idea here. So let's have a look at a little bit more of a complex one now. So I'm about to hit play on this one, and I want you to sort of just try and think and find the rhythm behind what is going on here, because it's a bit more of a complex groove, but there is a rhythm behind it. So let's have a think about that sort of rhythm that's behind the groove here. So the idea of this is, it seems more complex, right? But there still is a strong core idea behind it, which is hooking. And this is sort of the thing that's actually making this bass line interesting. Putting more notes into a bass line doesn't make it interesting. It's the catchy idea that's behind all of the extra notes that does make it interesting and rhythmic. So let's just sort of mute this one. And I'm actually just going to delete all of the extra notes and show you and reveal the rhythm behind this thing. So give me a second and I'll come back to you. So I've just deleted all of the extra notes here, and let's have a listen to this bass line and what it sounds like now. So this is the core idea here. I'm just following the chord progression. There's nothing special going on. And then I've just created a rhythm, and I've just repeated the rhythm over and over as it's following the chord progression. This is all that's happening. And then I've just changed a bit of velocity as well. And this is literally it. And so this bass line here, whilst it seems complex, it is really grounded in raw simplicity and structure. And then once we have this structure, what we're going to do is just start to add extra notes for a little bit more groove, a little bit more flair and style. So if I was to rebuild this other bass line melody up here, I would just simply start adding notes. So I'm just going to grab my pen tool and just put a note here and a note here, and let's have a listen to this. Right, and that's how we started it, right? I just added 2 extra notes. And then in this little section in here, I just sort of did a little flare, a little trill. So let's, and then I think I did something like, And then at the end of each bar, this last note here, I brought them down to the next chord progression 1/8 note early. So let's have a listen to this now. And then it's just about finding the little notes that work for your chord progression. So I think I remember doing something like this. And then again, this last note of each bar just sort of brought it down. Adding extra notes in here. Another one sort of a bit higher. And that is the idea of it. I literally have not deleted any of the notes that I added before in that structure, and I've simply just added extra notes around the structure. So it's those core motifs that are really behind the melodies that make the track catchy and interesting. And this is a really good way of melody writing as well, trying to start off with this simple foundations of your melody, and then if you want something a little bit more complex, you can just slowly start to add notes and slowly start to complexify, but make sure you've locked into that solid groove, that solid structure from the get-go, and that will make it so your track is interesting and catchy and you don't get lost with all these extra notes around. This is probably one of the most common things that I give feedback on. You know, the melody is a little bit too all over the shop. Like I don't have something to really latch onto. So starting simple and creating your hook and creating your motif and then branching out and complexifying that a little bit is a good way to do things. So this is a track that I made a long time ago. Let's just have a little listen here, and it's quite a hooky track due to a lot of hooks that are just sort of built into the drums and the bass line and the synths as well. So let's just have a listen here. I'm just going to turn off the synth here and let's just have a listen to the drums and the bass. So this bass is quite subby, so it might be hard to hear, but it's worth having headphones on right now. So it sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on, but again, you know, if I just am to mute this stab bass and just listen to this main bass and maybe the kick drum together, let's just have a listen to this. You can see there is a core structural idea. So similar to the last melody, I'm going to strip back the actual notes and show you sort of more or less the core notes here that always stay the same. They hit the same spots every time, and that's this one and this one. So let's have a listen here. And so those ones hitting the same spot every time really solidify the groove. And then I've sort of started to add little notes in here. So let's add these little two notes in here as well. So you can see that gives a little bit more flair, and then we have this stab bass in here, which also provides a little bit of response, you know, a little bit of a call and response going on, and it also provides its own little hook as well. So let's just solo the kick drum and the bass group here. So you can see that this note here is really strong. It's a really powerful note. It's playing at the same spot every time, and it sort of responds to this little roll in here. So you can see how I'm building my bass lines in terms of repetition and hooks and core ideas and motifs. So one last thing I wanted to quickly mention is if I just listen to the drums and the bass again. What is sort of playing in my head here is if I'm just listening to the drums, if I just increase the volume of these perk chops here, So this is kind of like a little bit of a hook in terms of the drums, in terms of the rhythm. It's something that's sort of catchy that's playing in the drums just as a percussion element, and it sort of solidifies the groove here. It works with this groove here, and it's just a percussion element. So let's have another listen. So if I play this perk chop here with the bass line, you can see that they work together. I'll just play with the kick drum as well. So you should be thinking about how you can incorporate little hooks like this into your rhythm as well. It doesn't have to be a melodic element like we said at the start of the video, and this will just really help solidify the groove of your track. So I hope this has given you some food for thought, some things to think about when you're next producing a track. Try to think of the core idea that people are actually going to listen to, the core hook that's actually going to get stuck in people's head, because if you don't have a core idea behind all your melodies, then your melodies will simply just not make sense. So again, I really do hope this has helped. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. Otherwise, if you've enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.